Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Satarasata Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chandravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Boundaracharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki BBT Boundaracharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Savior of the whole world is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi All glory to some devotees All glory to some devotees All glory to some devotees Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Could I have a Leelamrita additional pastimes? I guess they were cleaning out the podium. Thank you very much. This comes under the category of the nectar for which we are always anxious, right? Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. Additional pastimes, chapter titled A Summer in Montreal. When one of my books is published, Prabhupada said, I feel like I have conquered an empire. Having books in print gave meaning to Prabhupada's fight for U.S. residency. So everyone has seen in Prabhupada's museum, there's a small framed picture of Prabhupada's green card, alien registration. So that was at this time, 1968 in Montreal, when he was given that residency. That's right there. And only with these books published could he tour Europe. Krishna conscious literature was solid evidence that his movement was not a concocted, fly-by-night yogi's dream. Let the government leaders and scholars read these books. Let the student community read them. Any intelligent man would be impressed. These books were the most enduring glorification of Krishna and the most powerful propaganda for spreading Krishna's teachings throughout the world. Far from being the speculations of an ordinary conditioned soul subject to mistakes and cheating, these books contain the teachings and activities of Lord Krishna, the science of Krishna consciousness. Passed down by the great acharyas, they were books of perfect knowledge. Before Brahmananda left Montreal, Prabhupada asked him to send the Srimad Bhagavatam 2nd and 3rd canto manuscripts from the closet in his New York apartment. By October, as soon as Teachings of Lord Chaitanya was printed, he would have the manuscripts ready for dined upon. Speaking to Brahmananda and others in his room, Prabhupada charged them with the organization of book sales. There would be no scarcity of books, but his disciples would have to sell them. When Prabhupada had been alone in India, he had printed, gathered statements from scholars, advertised, and distributed his books. But now he was depending on his disciples. They recognized the importance of his books, but they had no ideas or means for distributing them. Prabhupada assured them, however, that by applying his instructions and trusting in Krishna for results, they would be successful. Prabhupada and Brahmananda discussed plans for starting their own printing press, perhaps in Montreal. With the cost of printing so high, Prabhupada wanted some of his disciples to learn the techniques of book publication. He suggested that one of his disciples in New York learn to run a press, and some of the girls learned to compose type. Thus, in the future, he might be able to start his own press in some convenient location. Yeah, okay, a little bit of water. And of course, that was in Boston and then eventually in Brooklyn. And the ISKCON Press at 32 Tiffany Place. Prabhupada was just mentioning in a lecture in New Vrindavan about the symbol of the Mridanga in ISKCON Press and also in by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, which indicated the Brihat Mridanga, that Mridanga that would be heard all over the world. So it's very important to see the symbolism. Sometimes we neglect to place any importance. We think, oh, just a nice little Mridanga on what does it mean? You know, that no, the Mridanga is the Brihat Mridanga. So it's the inheritance from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that we have to carefully curate, and Prabhupada was depending on us to expand. So it's unlimited, but we should be very effective in whatever we do, not haphazard, not speculative, just whatever we do very deliberately and in such a way that there's metrics that can be seen. Yes, this is a good system, that's not a good system. So Prabhupada is depending on us. He said that he's depending on us to distribute these books. Despite Prabhupada's plans for preaching in Europe, obtaining permanent residency in the United States and Canada, printing his books and starting a press, his life remained regulated and simple. He would give Srimad Bhagavatam lectures in the temple and daily see guests in his room. Constantly thinking, writing, chanting, and speaking about Krishna and how to spread Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada was the driving force of a revolutionary movement. Yet he mostly stayed at home, spending much of his time alone or in simple domestic dealings with his servants. One quiet afternoon in Prabhupada's sitting room, Govinda Dasi was bringing Prabhupada his prasadam when Prabhupada spied a baby rat running across the floor. We have similar pastimes. Immediately, Govinda Dasi set the tray of prasadam down and tried to catch the rat as it darted toward Prabhupada's desk. Getting up quickly from his seat, Prabhupada also joined excitedly in the chase. Then another rat appeared. When Harinam visiting from San Francisco, these are Canadian rats, by the way, they're not Brooklyn rats. So. When Harinam visiting from San Francisco heard the commotion, he came to the door and offered to help. Taking up his shoebox, he began chasing the rats, finally catching them both and letting them loose outside. Whenever these devotees are mentioned, we have to consider ourselves blessed that we had a little association, because now they're no longer with us. But these devotees did so much. Harinam, after this, went back to San Francisco, and then him and Tosan Krishna Prabhu opened up a center at that time in Santa Fe, New Mexico, for a short time. All these devotees were branching out. None of these devotees were older than 23, 24 years old at the time. And yet Prabhupada had complete faith that Krishna would guide them. And he just gave them free rein to go open up, go wherever they felt. Of course, Santa Fe at that time was sort of like a hub of the counterculture. To some extent, it may still be. There are certain areas that attract for some reason. Gainesville was another area like that. Devotees were drawn to it. Spiritual people were drawn to it, like Woodstock, New York, or Greenwich Village. So somehow or other. And devotees gravitate towards these places because they see that it's fertile preaching ground. So this is continue. Later, Prabhupada walked into the room where Guru Sundar and Govinda Das were working and told him, if you kept everything very clean, these rats wouldn't come. Take note, all of our kitchen vasis and cooks. If someone is very much attached to his dwelling, then he may take his next birth in that dwelling as a cockroach or a rat. These are sinful living entities, and they are taking their birth because of that attachment. He then asked Shivananda to seal up the cracks in the floor, just like we asked Mukundashraya to seal up the cracks. Sometimes when Prabhupada criticized Govinda Dasi for her mistakes, she would take it very emotionally and go into the bathroom and cry. One night while cooking Prabhupada's puffed rice set, Govinda Dasi made the peanuts too dark. "Why are these peanuts black?" Prabhupada asked as she served them as prasadam. "Why have you made them black?" When Govinda Dasi began to cry, Prabhupada criticized her all the more. "Why are you crying? You are crying because you are angry. Why have you done this?" His stern and angry look made her tears came even harder. "I am not angry," she sobbed. "I am very sorry I made the peanuts too dark." What mercy from the pure devotee. Once Govinda Dasi lent the dictating machine to a god sister who broke it, and Prabhupada became disgusted. "You American boys and girls, you are rich men's sons, so you simply think you can break something and then throw it in the street and buy a new one. You do not take care of such things, even temples. Only one person should use a machine. You should not have allowed her to use it." These words devastated Govinda Dasi, and she retired to cry for a while. But she soon recovered, and Prabhupada acted as if the scene had never taken place. Govinda Dasi took the chastisement as a test of her sincerity, and she had learned that Prabhupada's thunderbolts were generally followed by his usual kindness and gentleness. Prabhupada rarely went anywhere alone. For his disciples, it was unthinkable that he should go somewhere without one of them accompanying him to care for his needs or to confront whatever difficulties might arise. So when one afternoon Govinda Dasi looked in Prabhupada's room and found him gone, she became perplexed. Seeing that his shoes were gone, she ran out to the street. Unable to see him in either direction, she ran down to the corner where she saw him in the distance, walking away. When she finally caught up to him, she asked in a voice distraught and breathlessness, "Where are you going? Why have you left?" Prabhupada laughed quietly as he walked erect with his cane, his movements flowing. "Oh," he said, "I am just going to the bank. It's all right, I'll be back." Govinda Dasi apologized for being so demanding. "I just thought you shouldn't go alone because you have been ill." Prabhupada snapped back, "What do you know? Physician, heal thyself." And he walked on, leaving Govinda Dasi behind. As far as Prabhupada was concerned, it was Govinda Dasi who was sickly, not he. She was always bundled in sweaters and coats or blowing her nose. Once he had gone into the room where she and Gaurasundar worked, and it had been messy with tissues thrown here and there. "This is why you are always getting sick," he said, "because of uncleanliness." Another day, Prabhupada, accompanied by Gaurasundar and Govinda Dasi, was walking out of the house on his way to the temple when he began laughing, saying, "Yes, Govinda Dasi, everything is nice. You are an excellent secretary, an excellent cook, and you are good at everything. Your only disqualification is that you are a woman. But don't worry, next life you shall be a brahmachari." "Thank you, Srila Prabhupada," Govinda Dasi replied, enjoying Prabhupada's joke. Srila Prabhupada ki. So according to the schedule, today is the Adivas for Radhastami. And there was no shloka selected. So we've just read from Prabhupada Lamrita because we should always begin the two things Prabhupada gave us is Jai Radha Madhava, which in itself is a very intimate poem by Jayadev Goswami. Prabhupada never recommended that we lead anything by Jayadev Goswami. Yet he gave us this, plus, and in itself it's enough. And we saw Prabhupada enter into ecstasy, sitting on not just this Vyasasana, but many Vyasasanas. So inherent in that is the understanding that we have come in contact with something very, very unique. Very few people get to observe a revolutionary movement such as this. 500 years ago, there were so many souls, and we see who these personalities are, and they were there to witness the nascent beginning of this revolution. And then it was somehow or other put on hold for some years, just like an ember kept carefully, until it could be again fanned and brought into life by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then eventually by His Divine Grace. So these things have to be heard and understood in a certain context. We're not just passive observers. We're not historians or anthropologists. In school, you're studying all these situations that are supposed to give you some insight into human nature. When I was in college, anthropology was a big thing, a big deal. Everybody wanted to study, but it's a useless pursuit. And what did they give us to study? They gave us the pygmy headhunters. I'm thinking, what use is this to understand? And they go into great detail about how their social structure is, what the hierarchy is, who gets married to who gets to eat his grandfather. It's just a very disjointed, discombobulated situation. But here we're getting the opportunity to enter into revealed scripture. And Prabhupada carefully used those words, revealed scripture. This is not, again, some academic pursuit. But sometimes we have a tendency to devolve into that. And again, Punarmustika Bhav. Again, want to become some type of a scholar and study Vaishnava. Whatever, maybe get a chair, become in some university. And this is all the periphery. This is the outside of the bottle of honey that Prabhupada talks about. Without opening it up. And even if one has previously opened it, he has closed it again very tightly. For whatever reason, because it presented too much of a challenge. The whole idea of spiritual life is that one, anya bilasata sunyam jnana karma dinavatam. The essence is that one has to become free from all these, designations, but not just the sarva upadi, but he has to develop this friendly relationship. So this is not something, and of course, in the beginning we may not have an opportunity to immediately develop a relationship with the spiritual master. If one has simply read the books, he may have some appreciation from a certain perspective. But if he has the opportunity to serve the spiritual master, then immediately, without any artificial endeavor, a relationship develops. And just like in the beginning when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta emphasized Sambandha Abhideyam Prayojan, seems to be very rudimentary. Why such emphasis on these three things? Because when you understand what is the progressive nature, of bhakti, of our relationship, then you can appreciate where you are at any given moment. Just like if you're on a road driving, after 100 miles, I'm so much closer to my so-called destination. I'm following the map. As long as I don't deviate, I'm guaranteed to get to the destination. So in these various things, if I'm developing, so I first understand who is the spiritual master. And of course, by his mercy, who is Krishna. Because only the spiritual master can give Krishna. It is not that I can have any perception separate from what I've been, the opportunity has been given to us. Otherwise, everything again is just all academic. You know, what can the feeble brain understand about the omnipotent, omniscient, the Supreme Personality in all of his glory? And so the mercy of this movement has been that we've been giving a ringside seat to see how things are, to see how 500 years ago this movement began, and how it's been carried carefully by our acharyas, and how it's been handed down to us. And if anything, what we understand about these festival days, such as Radhastami, it is only possible by the mercy of the spiritual master. Otherwise, what can we understand? What did Lord Chaitanya, who could have given everything, and did in many respects, but he only left 8 verses. And so everything we know about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya is from his followers. But he personally never, everything was by demonstration, by mood and by example. And so we're fortunate that those who were there could document it. Like Swarup Damodar, like all these great devotees, who could understand the mind. It's inconceivable to us. Who can understand the mind of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? How is it possible? But when Krishna descends, he descends with his own entourage. So only those personalities could do so. It's not that now I can declare that I am by dint of being associated with, a pure devotee, now I have automatically entered into the eternal pastimes because in the Kunda, the spiritual master is also one of the eternal associates. And therefore now this is all concoction. One should be very careful when it comes to what he thinks. What did Prabhupada say famously? He said if one begins a sentence with I think, not a bar, what does the Prabhupada say? He should finish it in a closet. That's what he said. One begins a sentence with the words I think, he should finish it in a closet. And Prabhupada always used that as an example. I think, therefore, this is all a symptom of speculation. And so a devotee should never speak about that which is beyond his personal realization. It's not that we can sit up here and discuss the intimate pastimes of the Supreme Lord with any confidence or potency. We can speak and read what has been written by the acharyas. We read Krishna book all the time, and we take great pleasure in doing so. Tushanti cha ramanti cha. But one should never think or speculate or present himself as anything other than a person who is following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. We are Rupanugas, we are Prabhupada-nugas. So in all circumstances, we are simply followers. It should be clearly understood. And that's how our presentations should always be framed from that basis. We've said before, Satguru Maharaj told us when he was compiling Leelamrita, some of the details that were not germane to the narrative. Like when Prabhupada first left after being 1 year in New York without going anywhere, by Krishna's arrangement, the opportunity to go preach in San Francisco was there. Prabhupada immediately, without hesitation, went to San Francisco. But the devotees in New York were devastated. They had never been separate from Prabhupada. And he did everything, including cooking. Of course, now they're doing some cooking. But only Prabhupada gave class. Nobody else gave class. And they asked, they said, Prabhupada, when you're going, who will give class? There's no Zoom. There's no Team, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, no, nothing. They had telephones barely. Long-distance calls were very expensive. It wasn't like it is today. We had to make up schemes how to call each other. We used to place a collect call and say, I want to speak to Mr. Glubjaman. And then the operator would relay that message. Collect call for Mr. Glubjaman. Do you accept? This way they knew that the person was there. Said, Mr. Glubjaman will be back in 5 minutes. Please have the party call back. This is how we used to communicate on traveling Sankirtan. Let everybody know where, what we're going. It says, so tell Mr. Glubjaman that I'll be in Albuquerque tomorrow night. He can call me there. And this way the telephone company was assisting in passing along the message where we were. So they asked Prabhupada, so who should give class? So Prabhupada said, you should give class. All of you shall give class. And he said, Prabhupada, what should we speak about? First of all, there was only, there wasn't even Bhagavad Gita at that time. Prabhupada was giving class from, some alternate version of Bhagavad Gita with his purports, his own purports, on the fly, and from his manuscript. He said, when they said, what should we speak about? He said, you'll speak according to your realization. You'll speak according to your realization. So this is Sadhguru Maharaj felt that this was important. Eventually, it would be, passed along. And there was his punchline to this, because he was there. He said, those were the shortest classes in ISKCON history. Because what did we know? What did anybody know at that time? I'm not this body. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So very, very short classes. So one should not, of course, there's no substitute for being put in a situation where one has to, especially in the progressive Sambandha Abhideya path, everyone has to be tested by his ability to encounter those who would challenge the philosophy and be able to hold your own. This is the qualification of the second-class devotee. One cannot, of course, he can shy away from that. It doesn't diminish his standing in devotional hierarchy in one sense. He has full faith in Krishna. But if he's not able to, defeat or at least counter those arguments, then it's to be understood that he has not risen to that second-class platform yet. So it's not and we've all been, and most of us are still on the Kanishta level, whether we know it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not. Maya has many tricks up her sleeve, and she can compromise you in a second before you even know it. It happens all the time. More so now in Kali Yuga than any other time. So we have to be extremely careful, because we're carrying Maya around with us, everywhere in our pockets, wherever we keep that cell phone. Maya is right there. So there's does anyone think that there are cell phones? Does a sadhu take his cell phone to the Himalayas? What do you think, Nantabar? He has his Hrideshi Arjuna Tishati. It depends on the original communication pathway. No, those who are serious about spiritual life in that level, they're not connected in any way to the external situation. We've been there, we've been up in those caves, we've met these sadhus. And you can, from that, even though if they're not pure Vaishnavas, you can see the level of detachment that they've achieved is not some simple, how can you say, abstaining from so-called material comforts. No, there's a determination, a dedication, a complete commitment to just being in their bhajan. You know, it's not possible for us at this point. Maybe after a few years, some of you will take sannyas and go out and preach in some far-off place that has yet to be touched by Krishna consciousness. Not many left. What's the most hellish place that one can think of? How about with the Eskimos? Anyone want to go preach to the Eskimos? Freezing cold? Prabhupada said it is the most hellish condition. Most hellish condition. If anyone has read anything, in these old, of course, in school we had to read all these stories. It was part of grade school, grammar school, high school, about explorers or adventurers who would go and travel there. And the highest honor one could give to a guest who entered into their igloo was to offer them meat which had been completely pre-digested with maggots, with the maggots still on it. You can just imagine, we're giving people prasadam with nice paneer, nicely cooked, you know, everything. And in an Eskimo household, the highest honor you could give a person is pre-digested, rotting meat with maggots on it. The highest honor. So, yeah, it'll be a while before we can go preach to the Eskimos, it seems, but there's always another frontier, and you never know. What did Prabhupada say? Of course, I didn't hear it directly. I heard this from Tamal Krishna Maharaj, where Prabhupada told him, he said, the Chinese will be the last to come, but they'll make the best devotees. We're still trying to get inroads into that. But we see that when the Chinese people take something up, they're extremely committed. Even they're being prosecuted for this Falun Gong, which Falun Gong is very interesting. It's just a mishmash of yoga, Vedic philosophy, Chinese philosophy. When I went to China to do some service, someone brought back a book by Falun Gong. We were in a secret meeting. Everything in China is a secret meeting. There's nothing to be public. And then one person brought this book. When I looked at this book, I thought it was the first canon of Srimad Bhagavatam. But it was a Falun Gong book, and the person who had, one of the leaders, they had totally plagiarized, you know, one of Prabhupada's books, at least externally. I couldn't read the Chinese to know what it was saying, but it was interesting that they were taking our concept of the spiritual world, and they were using that to make devotees. And they have a huge following, but heavily persecuted and imprisoned and everything else. Our devotees were also imprisoned there. The two devotees that I was with in China at that time, the story they told me, we can't even imagine. We're sitting here in the comfort of Brooklyn Temple. We're getting nice prasadam. In order to try to follow the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and Prabhupada, they tried to escape China. How do you escape China? You can't get on a plane. They walked. And it's not just walk. I mean, they could take trains up to a certain point, but you get to the frontier and you have to walk. So they were trying to walk into Tibet and then from Tibet into Nepal. But they got caught at the border. It's two brahmacharis. put into jail for a year, tortured, starved. The only way you get out of jail is you can convince the jailers that you have given up Krishna consciousness. And what do? What do they feed you? They feed your mind pornography and they feed your body meat. So they had to go along with that in order to get out of the prison. So after 1 year of trying to maintain, they said, okay, plan B, pretend that we've been whatever, unbrainwashed, and then we go back to where we were. But once you've been in prison, you're marked. They always know who you are. They tell you, they walk right up to you and say, we know who you are. We know where you go. We know all of your friends. We know everything about you. Like that. And what do they say about the movement in China? Anybody ever hear that? When the secret police want to, make themselves known or show off their prowess, like these characters, and they say that we don't slaughter the pig until it gets fat. So in other words, your movement is too small for us to be bothered with. Falun Gong, that's a different story. We're all over them. They have whole prisons just for Falun Gong followers. But he says, you guys are just like that. You guys are small. Plus, they publish all our books. They print them. They don't publish them. They print them. Printed in China. That was a trick to get them to print those books, though. But somehow or other, all Krishna's arrangement. Do they get any brownie points for printing the books that we're distributing? What do you think they're making? Somehow or other. So the purpose of all this is to have context. Is that who is in charge of everything? Who is in charge of Krishna? Radharani. And who's in charge of this movement? Lord Chaitanya. So we're in the most secure situation. We have a legacy that no one can compare or compete with. And our fortune can't be measured, but still somehow or other we're thinking, no, maybe I should, just go do something else. Maybe I should kind of like, whatever, get a hobby. I'm not so engaged in devotional service. I've got so much time on my hands. Let me get a hobby. And we see devotees take up hobbies. They don't realize you're taking Krishna's time. You're a thief in a different manner. If I'm on the clock, if I'm working, probably gave that example. Everyone who's been in Calcutta, of course, I know that probably Bishop has been. It's a famous place. Oh, you too, aren't you? Dalhousie Square. Dalhousie. It's a big open square, like a park, like a Maidan. And all these, everybody in the old days, when everything was analog, and people had to, they had inter-office messaging. So one office, you had an envelope. I mean, if you ever, back in the day, we were all messengers. When you were in high school, that was your pocket money. Down on Wall Street. You went from office to office. You had a manila envelope, had a bunch of names or places on there. You had to go there, distribute what you had, get a signature, and go to the next place. So Prabhupada described this exact thing, that these messengers would take their envelope that they're supposed to deliver to all these people. They would go to Dalhousie Square, and they would go to sleep. Then they would go back into the office at the end of the day with a whole bunch of unfulfilled deliveries to say, what happened? What happened? Oh, this person had to wait. He wasn't there. So he's thinking that he's getting one over on the employer. They're paying me, and I'm sleeping in Dalhousie Square. So that's the mentality. So don't be a devotee thinking that, oh, I'm here, I'm getting my food, I'm getting everything, I'm getting such a nice restaurant. What is the meaning of Anyabilasata Sunyam? or ahoitikiya pratiyata. If we want to please Radharani, what should be our mood? Our mood, was there any time when the gopis are telling us, I think we're going to go and do something else. You can go to Krishna by yourself? We're all the maidservants to His divine grace, who is directly serving the divine couple. So we're thinking, no, I should do something else. I have too much time. No. That is Maya. That is Maya. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love. That means you're thinking, feeling, and willing. Everything has to be totally focused, just like anything else. If you probably give so many analogies about the paramour, always focused on that. When will we meet? When will we meet? So this should be thinking. Of course, everyone who was there at the time, even my god sister Mahamaya, she wrote a book because it was such a tangible experience. She said, Srila Prabhupada is coming. So every temple in the movement, Prabhupada would come and spend usually at the most 3 days a year. But in the time leading up to those 3 days, the temple was just a flurry of activities. All last minute things. I don't know why we would wait till last minute. Somebody gets an idea. Let's build a new Vyasa for Prabhupada 1 week before he's coming. What? Why? Why? And that's how that Vyasa got built. It was, just all-consuming everything that had to be done to get ready for Prabhupada. Why wait till last minute? Fix all the broken glass in Prabhupada's sitting room. What? Last minute? What's the point? Why? Had a whole year to do it, but because there wasn't always have a person who was dedicated to doing this or fixing that or this. Everybody was usually out on Sankirtan and Harinam. Even though there were plenty of carpenters and, handy persons, mostly were out distributing Prabhupada's books. But then for a short time, like Ratyacha, everyone would just focus and everything else would be kind of like put on hold for a week while the temple got repainted, everything got redone. And as Prabhupada was basically walking the door, the paint was drying on the Vyasa side. So this is how things were. But it was ecstasy. There was a certain thing that can't be duplicated. So that she wrote that book, Prabhupada is Coming, to try to put some of that mood, that if we're always in that level of thinking, just like the lovers, the paramours, that how can we please Prabhupada? How can we please Radha Govinda? And what can we do? Because it's not that they're coming, they're here. So how do we go to that next level of just so immersed in trying to please them? And ultimately, there has to be some tangible service connection. Yes, worshiping the deities on the altar, that's one thing. Going Harinam is one. But the feeling has to be there behind it. It's not like, okay, you have a so-called lover, and you go and you hand her a bouquet of flowers, and you think, okay, that's it. That's all I have to do. That's my obligation. So we're giving flowers, we're giving garlands, but it can't be that mechanical process. The love has to be there. How am I doing it? So this feeling, the word in Sanskrit is bhav. And he gave a very, how can you say, just like he was with Govinda Dasi. He wanted to, he was giving her a lesson, and she was crying. So sometimes Prabhupada would also do like that. He would take the Bhagavatam class, he would turn it around, and it would become a complete, how can you say, ego-killing chastisement lecture. We would basically point out all of our faults. Why is this dirty? Why is this broken? Why are the deities getting day-old flowers, day-old garlands, dried garlands. So he was extremely upset because he can see that, and he clearly articulates, he says, the bhava is lost. You're doing things mechanically. And what was the killer line he said? He said, so everyone's thinking, whatever money we get, at least let us eat. In other words, the windows are broken, the deities are getting old garlands, the temple is filthy, but you are still eating? Is that your love? So we should be very careful how we consider our services in relationship to Krishna. It's not just, the altar or the kitchen or the lobby or the Krishna hall. These are areas that correspond to the parts of our heart that need to be deep cleaned. Because we don't typically go searching after those things. But when the opportunity arises, we should embrace them. All right? Of course, we're not the military, although Prabhupada gave us some props in that regard, that we are Krishna's soldiers. We're trying to distribute these books, and we're going to places very difficult, being persecuted, arrested, jailed, imprisoned, tortured. So all these things are there. But but the point is, it all has a purpose. And the purpose is that let me become so purified that I'm able to undertake any austerity without complaint, like the military. Okay? They have all these slogan t-shirts, motivational posters. And they're not like motivational posters in IBM or Google, because they say things like, embrace the suck. You don't say that in the corporate world. Embrace the suck. Because it's not that difficult to go in and clock in and punch out a few lines of code. There's no challenge, really. You go to school 4 years, they teach you what to do. Nothing. You're not going to go on a battlefield. You're not going to be in the freezing cold. You're not going to be soaking wet. So the slogans they have are like, what does it say? The easiest day was yesterday. The easiest day was yesterday. And what's the other thing? My favorite one. But you didn't die. But you didn't die. It was hard. It was the hardest day you ever had, but you didn't die. And that was the easiest day. So there's so many opportunities to go deeper into finding out what can I do that will simultaneously please the spiritual master, please Krishna, and afford me the opportunity to become purified of my anarthas, of my unwanted things. So that's like a trifecta. If you can get it all together at the same time, not just hitting it piecemeal. You try to get it. So some people say, well, I don't want to do that service. It's too hard. Well, somebody's keeping track of that response. It's not, it's not the temple commander or the temple president, because it's all happening up here and in between your ears or somewhere in between your heart. But somebody said, okay, all right, noted. So Krishna will, at a certain point, he'll give you something that is a pass or fail. But you don't have an option. And so that's the point that you're actually studying for, in one sense. That one challenge that will inevitably come and you'll either pass it or you'll fail it. So don't prepare to fail. Prepare to succeed. Do everything that you can to get the internal strength. Following, what did Prabhupada say? By following all the little rules and regulations. Because the devotee asked him, what is the secret of success? And Prabhupada give him, read all these books, read this, do that, stand on your head. No. He said, by following all the little rules and regulations. And there's many. That was the joke back in the day. Devotees had a sense of humor. They still do. They used to joke that we're the International Society for Rules and Regulations. We used to joke among ourselves. It's always says, someone's telling you, oh, bro, you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. So many things. When you're a new devotee, they're telling you all the time, no, bro, you can't do that, bro. Your left hand? No, you can't do that. But what are you doing? International Society for Rules and Regulations. But there was no harm, and there's no loss. It didn't bother us. We didn't think it was petty, or this guy's out of touch, or he's just old school. No, it was just, it came with the opportunity. You took it in. And you learned. Because somehow or other, you weren't afraid to how can you say, have your ego a little bit, another slice put into the dustbin of your previous life. It's gone, it's finished. Don't worry about it anymore. So we have an opportunity all day to think about tomorrow. The karmis are thinking about what am I going to eat tomorrow? What am I going to dress? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? We only have one thing to do: how to please Radharani tomorrow. In everything we do, from the moment we rise to the moment we take rest, we have a whole day already pre-planned by our acharyas. And this is an honor to be able to have this opportunity. Who else can get this? Manushanam sahasreshu kachid yatati siddhe. Millions of people who will just come in contact, and out of them, hardly one. And out of those one, there's a few gathered together in a temple in Brooklyn who have the opportunity to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead's divine consort, his counterpart in every respect, Madan Mohan Mohini, the attractor of Cupid. And of course, she's our attractor also, but she's not ours. She's not there for our pleasure. But she's there, she's gracious and enough to accept our service. And for that, we are eternally grateful. So any questions, since we didn't have a shloka, we didn't have a purport? Prabhupada's giving so many we had Prabhupada's association. We got a lot of purport. A lot of instructions from that 2 pages in the Leelamrita. All right? Especially that was funny, right, Anshu? In your next life, you'll be a brahmachari.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for your class. You mentioned that when Prabhupada, he was leaving from New York to San Francisco, mentioned that...
Hold it a little bit further so I can both hear you and then the audience can hear you, because I can't hear you when you talk in the mic.
He mentioned that everyone should give class and that they should speak according to their realization. My question is, sometimes when we have to speak, we have to do some research and learn about new things. And so I'm wondering, how can we determine what is according to our realization and what is not?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, to a certain extent, you have to know from your experience, usually Krishna will give you some appreciation of where you are at any particular point in time in relationship to your spiritual life by challenging you, by putting you in a situation where all you have to go on is your realization. You're either convincing yourself or you're convincing someone else. Where everything that you've read or everything that you've heard immediately comes into play. So this is just like when you're learning any so-called skill, right? Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayoja Janayat Yasubharagyam Gyanam Chayota Hoitakam. So this knowledge becomes wisdom through enunciation. So we're understanding that there's a process by which you convert knowledge into wisdom. And it's by application. So these various scenarios that you encounter are all meant for your edification, for you to build upon the foundation of realization, so that you can actually give someone insight that whether you explain it to them or not, you can say, been there, done that. Because that's what it essentially translates into. Just like if I know how to fix a car, I didn't learn it, I wasn't born with that. It's not intuition. You apply yourself under the guidance of some person. Prabhupada gave that example of an apprentice. An apprentice learns. In Mayapur, he gave that lecture. He learns. He becomes a servant, not a master, but he learns. And so by that process, you're able to master whatever it is that you have applied yourself to. If you're applying yourself to devotional service, you may think that this is not a targeted approach. Someone's thinking, no, you have to study this only and don't deviate. No. Devotional service gives you a broad base for which your internal proclivities will manifest. Your attraction to a certain aspect of devotional service will manifest. But ultimately, it has to result in the pleasure of the spiritual master. If it doesn't please him, then you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong track. So it may have to be realigned. But it's the basis. It's the starting point. It's where you begin to appreciate that what I've read, I'm understanding. What is my true relationship with the spiritual master and Krishna and his society and his mission and his service? It's not about me and Krishna. You can pretend that it is. We all know we have this eternal relationship with Krishna, but I'm not here trying to fix up my relationship with Krishna directly. Okay? First of all, we have to go through who? Lord Nityananda, Lord Balaram, Srimati Radha. All these personalities have to be pleased first. Can any of us actually say, well, I pleased Lord Balaram last week, so therefore I'm entitled to some compensation? No. This is a gradual process. One has to think, no, let me just do whatever I can constantly. This is the whole point. Endeavoring with great determination. Constantly. Everything is continuous. Without interruption, without motivation. But somehow or other we've kind of divided these things up for our convenience. Not for Krishna's benefit, but for our convenience. No, I got to have my downtime, this, that, the other thing. It implies that you're not getting the taste for which we are always anxious. Ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, one becomes fixed. And we use this term all the time. What do we say? Oh, he's a fixed devotee. What does that mean? He's fixed in one spot? He's fixed in one dhoti? He's fixed in one... What is he fixed in? Means he doesn't deviate. He's just, I want to serve Krishna. What's the next service available? Let me jump on that train. Okay? So this is, and we want to be able to give this to the next generation, this mood of pure devotion. Not a mood of, well, you only have to do 2 hours service and then you can do this. No. We're cheating them. Let them make their own arrangements if that's what they feel. But don't predetermine or preload some misconceptions into someone. They'll figure it out on their own at a certain point. You know, we watched for 50 years how this plays out. But we never heard Srila Prabhupada anywhere in any lecture, in any of his books say that, no, it's okay, you can do this, do it like that. No. And we've survived his chastisement in many ways. And so we know what he wants. And it's our turn to roll our eyes when someone says, no, bro, that was then, this is now. And we think, who says that? Who says that? But people will try to act based on time and circumstances that, no, devotional service it's not like it was back in the day when Prabhupada was here. No. That's a false premise. It's actually Maya or Mayavadi. It goes completely against what Prabhupada was teaching. So make sure whoever you meet, whoever you speak to, you give them Krishna 100%. Not 10%, 20%, 30%. Let them figure out where they are. But it's not up to you to say, well, maybe. Prabhupada gave us 16 rounds. In the beginning, we don't tell a person who's just visiting a temple that you have to chant 16 rounds. But we know that that's the goal. And we can tell them right up front that you'll get the maximum benefit if you can chant 16 rounds. Okay, but if you could chant one, chant one. So that's okay. But they should know what the actual purpose and goal is. Don't let them, no, you can just go on chanting 8 rounds for the rest of your life. No. You just go on doing, 15 minutes of service for the rest of your life. No. It's good if you can do 15 minutes of service. It's good if you could do 5 hours of service. It's good if you can do service all day long. But at the same time, it has to be unconditional. This is the key. Some people can only do unconditional for whatever, a certain amount of time. That's their decision. After that, they have to make some adjustments to their minds. Oh, this is I don't know if I can do this. I gotta stay at the front desk for 6 hours. Man, that's torture. Why? Make the best use of a bad bargain. It's nectar. You get to preach to people on the phone. You get to preach to people coming in the door. You get to watch Prabhupada's lectures on the monitor. It's a nectar engagement. But if you see it as something else, yes, then you won't get the whole benefit. So it's 10 after 9. It was a nice question, Anshu. Anyone else have any other questions? We can leave it for what? Michael, you have a question? Oh, I can't. Michael has a question. I have to answer it. I have to try.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your realizations, especially on service and the mood, like being engaged in service, not like a hobby, like, oh, I'll do like 20 minutes and I'm done. More like 24 hours a day. Your mind, I was wondering if you're, how you could.
Actually, Prabhupada did give us a time. He said 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay, so outside of that, you got a little extra time. But 4 a.m. to 10 p.m., Prabhupada said, fully engaged.
I wanted to know, what should you do if you feel that your body can't push itself? It's like to do so much, you'll like burn out.
That's a good question. One has to understand his own psychological limitations. We're all young men. It's not like, you're all young men. I'm no longer in that category. But to the extent that you have some hesitation, that will result in, because Prabhupada said all sickness comes from the mind. Not all, I think he said 99% or something like that, too, when he was talking to this, one of my god brothers in Germany. And he wasn't even asking Prabhupada the question, he was only thinking it, where the sickness comes from. Prabhupada immediately answered him that 90% or 99% of sickness comes from the mind. And psychosomatic is a term that people use nowadays. You can make yourself sick. Because I'm frustrated, I don't like this, I think that I should not be doing this. The mind takes this and immediately compromises your body. But if you think, what am I doing? This is not hard. I'm not out in the field. I'm not driving a tractor 8 hours a day with the sun baking my neck. We've done that. We used to go to Gitanagar. We used to work in the early morning hours to bale the hay, and then once it was done, we had to load the hay into the hayloft. I pity the devotees who aren't, ready to surrender to that level of hard labor. You're talking heat like you can't believe. And in a hayloft, if you ever understand, the heat rises from the moisture in the hay. So the loft is the upper part of the barn. So that's where the heat is concentrated, for lack of ventilation. And you're up there, and you have to wear, in order to not be torn to shreds by the hay, you're wearing long sleeve shirts and long pants. Because you're constantly rubbing one after another these rough bales of hay, square bales. They call them square bales. Okay, so this is, you could think, oh man, I don't like this. But if you think this is all for the cows, for Krishna's cows, Krishna gives you the pleasure, the ecstasy associated with the service. Plus it's a workout. I mean, there are people, nowadays I see men in the temple, they don't have enough physical activity. They go to the gym down the block. They go swimming. They go to work out. What is that? Not enough work in the temple? One should always be thinking, what can I do to please Krishna? And if I'm thinking, I have to do this, I have to go to the gym, hey, I know a bunch of books that need to be moved, or a dumpster that needs to be loaded, or floors that need to be swept and mopped. This is all physical work. You just have to decide that this is the physical work that I want to do, and not that one. It's all up to you. It's your decision. But burnout is, in my experience, mostly self-imposed, because I didn't want to do something, or I don't want to do it, or I've done it. It's just I'm whatever. So that happens. But don't let yourself get burned out. I can honestly say, my dear Lord, please allow me to. But I have never been in that position of being. I have been in the toughest conditions, and Krishna can yet, maybe he'll give me something that will make me think like that. I can't say. But up to this point, no. Up to this point, no. He's been very merciful. And the only reason I can think that he's been merciful is because I've never, ever once thought that there's some service that I don't want to do, that I've been assigned. So take whatever opportunity. If someone says, don't think that, oh, I can't do this. Think that I can do this. I will do this now. They have a whole philosophy in corporate New York. There was this one guy, very famous guy. He used to have all those people every day stand up with him, or whoever was in the office, and they would say, do it now, do it now, do it now. That was their mantra. And it was a very successful company. No procrastination. That's how he killed procrastination. Everybody, every day, do it now, do it now, do it now. So, what are we doing now? Chanting Hare Krishna. What do we have? We have service. There's always service here. Have you ever noticed that? You can go down at 10 o'clock at night. The table downstairs will be filled with trays with prasadam. It needs to be consolidated and transferred and brought into the kitchen. Service. Somebody forgot to do it, somebody wasn't assigned. But if I walk in on it, then technically it's my responsibility, because Prabhupada said that if you don't do something, then you're in the same mode as the person who neglected to do it. So you have to think, I don't want to, what should I do? Should I ignore it? The word ignore, where does it come from? Ignorance, tamagun, the mode of ignorance. So don't get infected by the modes. You see something, do something. Don't leave it for the next person. It's not there. It's Krishna. We say this all the time. And this is realization because it's based on what Prabhupada did. He always did that. He would walk on the path. When you walk around Krishna Balaram, we used to have a foot wash basin for the pilgrims, right in the corner of the temple. If you're looking at Krishna Balaram from the front, it was on the left corner. So as you come around, so that was because the shoes, people would want to wash, because we used to have what's there now? The Welcome Center. So where the Welcome Center in was where we used to wear the shoes, because that was the entrance, the side afternoon entrance. People come, put their shoes, walk over to the foot bath, wash your hands, wash your feet. So Prabhupada would circumambulate the temple, and devotees have seen this, but the most famous one was he stopped circumambulating. Someone had opened the tap and not closed it properly. He walked over to the tap and he turned it off. Everyone else, and he waited. He didn't do it the first time around. He wanted to see if someone else would do it. And no one else did it. So he walked over and he turned the tap. It's Krishna's energy. Why are we wasting water? In India, you don't pay for the water coming out of the ground, but you pay for the pump to pump it. So it's a waste of electricity, plus it's a waste of water. So these are the examples we saw. So this is realization. That Prabhupada would not let something get past him. And to the extent that we do, that's on us. So that must be the signal. I heard the phone go off. It must mean that it's time to end the class. Shrimati Radharani ki jai. And, we don't, Radharani is never absent with Krishna. Krishna is always there, except when she's with her gopi friends. But we never address them. In India, Prabhupada said, yes, they say Jai Radhe. We say Radhe Sham. Radhe Sham. So, Jai Radhe Sham. Jai Krishna Balaram, Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. And who'll take away, putting all this away? Who gets it? Michael gets to do that? You get to put away all this, Michael?